Welcome to Between Two Clinicians, the podcast that gives you a backstage pass into the mind of two therapists. I'm Talia.
I'm Adam Luke. We've spent years helping others navigate the complexities of their minds and relationships.
In this podcast, we're flipping the script, and we're sharing our own unfiltered insights. No topic is off limits, and no issue too taboo. We're ready to tackle the tough stuff with honesty and empathy. Let's dive in.
Well, hello.
Well, hello there. It's been a minute, and we are finally back to record a very hot episode topic on Between Two Clinicians. I think arguably we are, not just you and I, therapists are a great fit to be able to discuss. We were chatting about off air, the secret lives of Mormon wives, bachelorette, I guess, franchise, Taylor, Frankie, Paul, Jessi, and Jordan, what is going on with those relationships, a lot that went on behind closed doors. So I guess living up to the name of Secret Lives, really, if we're looking at it, but also not so secret because it was all over TMZ. And this,
True.
The goal of this episode of Between Two Clinicians is not to shame or cast blame from what we talked about. It's to more so highlight just how important understanding mental health, family systems, domestic violence, and the role that media can play in throwing fuel on that fire. It's hard enough to go through family and mental health struggles without being in the public eye, to also have to face all of that commentary and backlash and people taking sides when there's no sides. I mean, not that there's no sides to be taken, but like all sides being understood is a huge part of not having this be a shaming episode. So it's a hot topic and we want to talk about it as mental health professionals, but it's not supposed to be like a reality show TMZ. Like we talked about Love is Blind more so. That's a little different.
This isn't going to be Andy Cohen sitting on the
No, it's not to be sensationalizing it. It's to talk more from a clinical perspective, like we touched on with Love is Blind. Who thought of this? Right? Love is Blind should be you and you're so across from a therapist going, why are you on the show? Like that's different, right? And then with reality TV, there are, I believe, we can just segue into it. There's a certain kind of person who is either comfortable with or pursuing having their life be online. You and I indirectly are part of that. We chose to do a podcast. I chose to have a big, inadvertently, social media page and a presence. We're on YouTube. That's not required of every person or every therapist. And reality TV is an option that some people choose and pitch. And you and I were seeing, like, was there any doubt that there would be a concern for mental stability or lack thereof when you see the first episode of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives? That looked tough. That looked like an incredibly toxic relationship. It looked like it was substance induced for part of it, or amplified at least by substances. By no means, like, yes, it makes for quote unquote sensational TV, but that's a real person's life. And then you get to know more in the future seasons. What was her family life like? What was her mom's life like? And that therapist that they brought in the most recent season for the mother-daughter relationship, I had a lot of notes on that. I would have loved to be that therapist. I probably would have been a lot more blunt and direct. Maybe I never got an email. It's not like why they didn't choose either of us, but that needs to be touched on. There was a lot there that was shared, and in the future, I'm still not done because I'm trying to analyze like each episode. So I'm not going to have any spoilers. Hopefully you don't either, or if you do, just keep them in. Looking at how the session went with Taylor and Taylor's mom is really insightful into where her tolerance level, in my opinion, and I'm not in her head, I'm not her therapist, where her tolerance level for being treated in an abusive way or abusing others stems from. Not only transgenerationally from what it sounds like her mom had to go through, but she witnessed and what she felt. And I can only imagine how heartbreaking that was when her mom was like, there's times I wish I would have given you up for adoption. Ouch. If I were the mom's therapist, you're allowed to feel that way. I wouldn't recommend sharing that with your kid. No matter how old we get, we talked about numerous episodes, how we view our parents and how we imagine they view us shapes the way we view ourselves and conduct ourselves in the world. She gets told, you're terrible, you're garbage, you're no better than Dakota. How else are we going to expect her to act? Not excusing the behavior, to be very clear.
No, it's not a permission slip, but it does help us see like the causation and correlation of things.
Right.
I mean, something that you get like right away from watching Secret Lives is I feel like Taylor doesn't hide that she very much has a chip on her shoulder to try to be out front, the pick me. And I think that when you start to recognize that, yeah, there's a system that she came from where she was not prioritized, you then start to see that like she's essentially weaponized these defense mechanisms that got her through life and finding significance through other people's expectations or affirmations of her. What I think is interesting is when the whole TMZ thing dropped, and it's not judgment, but it's sitting as a therapist and going, this actually looks like many of my other case files, right? Like, sadly, domestic violence is really hereditary. And what I mean by that is you learn it from your parents and you learn it from the relationships that your parents have.
And the systems, yep.
And those are basically, this is how you've been taught to fight, right? Mm-hmm. What's interesting is when you sit with clients who sometimes there's like this disjointed couple that will come in and one will be extremely emotional and articulate and verbal. And they'll say, well, he or she just doesn't care and whatnot. And then you start doing sort of a little bit of a genogram and you realize most of the time they grew up with parents that didn't fight, right? So if you have not had peace and harmony and a calm presence role model to you, you're only going to fall back on the things that you remember in the worst moments that are possible. Again, not a permission slip, but I think that there's also this reality that reality TV is actually a terrible intervention when it comes to healing people. But so many people go on it for a healing journey.
To be seen, to be understood, in an attempt to be seen, Correct. To be understood. Visibility is what drives desire for visibility, meaning I want to be seen, I want to be understood, drives, I would say, a majority of the at least subconscious. That's my view. Why else would you portray yourself on reality TV specifically? There's a certain archetype, certain psyche that is drawn to it, and it's different than other shows where the spouse of the child of the so-and-so of the person, they're kind of on it, but it's peripheral. Yeah. That's not their genuine desire, but they'll be a good sport because the person that they want or the person they're with or their family member is on it. Like The Bachelor, for example. Maybe they don't all want to be on it, but they know that family member is more comfortable in the limelight. It is not going to create or the healing, to your point, that you're seeking. Feeling known, feeling seen, feeling understood is an inside job that is best done in therapy and understanding where the need for what is the validation I'm seeking from society and the kind of the magnitude, right? So if I'm seeking validation, I might, or connection, I might reach out to you individually, Adam, and say like, hey, I'd love to get lunch and touch base as a friend. That's one way to fill my cup. How empty might someone's cup be if the way they're trying to fill it is to reach out to mass millions and have commentary and go on Call Her Daddy and all these other podcasts? And I'm not shitting on podcasts. Obviously, this is a podcast. There's a reason people seek healing that way. And it highlights, just in my view, just how void their validation or self-worth or self-esteem cup might be because they're being subject to so many people's opinions. I don't know about you. I mean, I love reviews on the podcast. This is going to sound super bitchy. My goal in doing this is not to hear other people's opinions. It's to share my opinion. So it's different in that sense. And I think for Taylor, Frankie, Paul, or for Jessi and Jordan, for all the people on that show, what a highlight of how traumatizing and abusive that culture is. One of my favorite Instagram comments, ironically, haha, this person was commenting like, as somebody of the Mormon Faith, I can assure you, this is not the goal of blah, blah, blah. And there was like, I'm not joking, 400 people who had commented below. As an ex-Mormon, I can 100% say that it is. I think what they were trying to say is God, religion, right? They were trying to make a commentary on like, if God, I'm saying not if God were real, but they were trying to comment, God doesn't promote abuse, read the Old Testament. But look at what they're trying to heal and go to faith for. A lot of the times when we feel lost or broken or directionless, some people turn to faith. It happens to be a very patriarchal culture, a very patriarchal faith. And they got the dad talk guys talk about that on every episode. You know, in typical Mormon religion, it's supposed to be the men this, but I would never want, then why would you say it? Why would you make a negging comment, but then clarify, but I'm not like them? But you kind of are. And some ways they exemplify it the most, like the Jessi and Jordan thing. I'm not aware of Dakota's upbringing as much, but I know from firsthand experience, the Mormon faith is very unique in its culture, and they have a lot of certain beliefs about women and their success. And what I've known about men that I've worked with, when they feel envious or jealous, they don't take it well. They usually take it out in an abusive way. Not necessarily the case for Dakota and Taylor. I think that's more the substance use toxicity, what they're used to. But for the Jessi and Jordan, from what I've heard and seen in the interviews, a lot of that is channeled by like, I'm the stay-at-home dad. And she was like, he golfed every day. He didn't bring in an income. He was riding on her. And we made that comment when she was talking to her dad. He's hard to marry, but he might be harder to be divorced from. And the dad's face was like, yep. This is laden in this culture. So it's reality TV culture.
And in that, it also brings up like the seething codependency.
Oh,
like that's absolutely. Like that's, I mean, even when those episodes pop out where you get to see the couples or whatnot, you start to realize that many of them are just trauma bonded.
They don't have developed frontal lobes. They had 3 to 4 kids before they even turned 25.
And so that's why at that point you go back to, it's a relationship that's literally been started from the beginning in, like, I don't know if I want to say convenience, but there weren't a lot of options. Like, that's the other thing about tight-knit communities like the Mormon church is, okay, you've got like one youth group, right? Like, this is what you need to pull from this, and this is what you need to do.
And there's everybody around you following that culture. Well, we got married young and it worked out fine. We had 19 kids and counting and it turned out fine. One thing that my analyst years ago said, and
not so much.
Probably not, right? I mean, there's been
well, now the 2 of them have been arrested for
child. But you know, all in good faith. A comment that my analyst made very early on for people who, and this is probably going to be a uncomfortable realization for some people, or like thing to think about. Why would somebody who is truly interested in the individual experience of the child and their development, like no one who's truly interested in that on a unique basis has so many kids back to back like that, in terms of like 1 to 2 years apart and planning for it and having, and again, this is kind of a separate discussion with like the Catholic faith, the Mormon faith. This is not a commentary on birth control and morality. It's my view of it and why I'm discussing it and bringing that part in. The cultural speaking, if that's the norm in your culture, you wouldn't think to go against it. And if you do go against it in some way, you're going to have attention drawn on you. And for them, that's where the mix of, if there's going to be attention, I may as well capitalize on it and let's go on social media. And that was a very unique generational thing for Mom Talk to even have existed, and for women in the Mormon faith to be bringing in more money than the men, for it to be more matriarchal. Like, that was groundbreaking in so many ways. It wasn't without trauma. Jason Macy, she was 16. I'm not shocked that she has all these autoimmune conditions and that they eventually did split, because he was in his 20s. That's disgusting. Like, she's a child, and now you're having 3 to 4 kids before you were even 24 or 25. Shocking what they have to go through. And because they're all young and it's normalized, they're not going to think, oh, it could have been different. Now that they're getting older, they're being exposed to other options as much as others are being exposed to what their life was like. It doesn't have to be this way. I don't have to stay and make it work. I don't have to follow the faith or the culture that I was raised in, because they're two different things. But there's a lot of eyes on them. And a lot of people, I think, were making comments like, it doesn't have to be that way, or that's really unhealthy. And we touched on, Taylor's stepdad in that one episode of like, well, what does that say about you? That's an incredibly shame-based family. And I'm not diagnosing because I've never seen her in the room. We know as clinicians, the personality disorders often, I saw a meme the other day, it was like, personality disorder is such an odd way to say they didn't have the support they needed in childhood, like of any kind of personality disorder. And I'm like, interesting. And with borderline personality traits, it does, in my view, in my studies, come from severe trauma. There's something that I needed that I didn't get, and I went about it I tried to go about it in a way that wasn't successful in my family. And now, right, for that symptomatology, I'm afraid of abandonment. I have intense, unstable self-image. I have high highs and low lows in my mood. I have, maybe for some, like transient psychosis, where they have breaks with reality. Their struggle with substance use, their struggle with impulsivity. If you look at what early childhood trauma can cause, how would it not look like borderline traits? That's not excusing the behavior. It's to try to explain how somebody could try to rationalize or be capable of it. And ABC knew these charges were not new, and whether or not it was reactive abuse.
The amount of money that Disney spends on vetting things, there was no way that it was not known.
No, but they tried to revive a dying franchise, and then as soon as they got what they needed, they cut it off. This was not, I could see this being the move if all of this had just come out. That's fair, right? Like but to live in a world where media has more accountability than our presidential staff is quite interesting, or the Congress or Senate, whatever. Like, we're looking at all this other stuff and that's not coming out or being held accountable. People aren't being held accountable, but we're making her the fall person. I'm not justifying what happened in that fight. But I do know from women I've worked with in domestic violence situations and couples I've seen in the screening process before, I'm like, we can't continue. You're not in your right mind when you're behaving in those ways. And you are almost certainly coming from a terrified small child trying to fight and defend to not be abandoned, to not have an attachment rupture, and to be seen, known, loved, cared for. Asking somebody who isn't capable of doing that to themselves to do it for you is almost never. There's so much trauma in these families that we're seeing on this show.
So, well, like everything that you just said, some things that come to mind for me is like, I think you did a really good job at, like, what I'm pulling out of it is desperate people tend to trend towards narrative or storytelling. And what better way than a show, one way or another, because I can sort of rewrite whatever narrative is in my life and be presented as a completely different person.
Right.
I think that fits like the Taylor side. There has always seemed to be this massive pressure, even from the first Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. There's believe me. Okay. The next thing, I think, and maybe this is a conversation that does go more after reality television, is it seems like producers in reality television specifically seek out the individuals that can be psychologically fragile.
Yes.
Because it makes for good television. There's actually a great show on right now called Hollywood Demons. It's on Netflix.
Okay.
And it goes through a lot of these Hollywood actors that had extremely maladaptive sides to them. Okay. Like they do the father on Seventh Heaven, right? Like they go through the fact that like like you might be sitting there and go, why does the Power Rangers, which is like a global phenomenon, still pulls in a bunch of people, how can they have so many previous actors that are also criminals or murderers? And what you end up finding is they were actually somewhat targeting actors that they knew were desperate.
Yeah.
And in that desperation, they knew that they could extort them.
Yes.
And like that's where I feel like sometimes all these reality TV shows, they need to require these participants, per se, these cast members, to do like a psychosocial evaluation.
So
but it would be way too boring.
They do that. Actually, I have been privy to this information with one of my good colleagues who's a psychologist that was approached by numerous TV shows to be the person who administers these assessments. I believe her colleague said yes to one of them and is a person who does it. They do screenings. They throw out the data from the stable people, and they specifically target people who their MMPI results are high on hypochondria, high on narcissistic traits, high on what's the other one? The LF and case, I'm probably letting a lot out of the bag, like the intentional lying and white lying. They'd rather go for people who are intentionally manipulative. They are screening, but they're using it for evil and for casting and for drama.
They're actually using it as a strategy. Yeah, it's not a rule out, it's a prioritization.
They're literally like, most people who are like, oh, okay, you have this thing that's going to make you really unstable and it won't mix well with alcohol and not eating well. Here you go. Versus them being like, we'll protect you and keep you safe. They're out for views. Their job is, I need to make money for my company. It's a business. It's not.
Absolutely. It's
not to keep people protected, but to your point, they do those screenings, and they're doing it because they want people who are just unstable enough that they're not going to hopefully blow up the whole thing. That's why screening. They knew she went through that. They knew what the charges were. They knew this. They could defend it if they needed to in a PR thing. And in my view, I think it was strategic, and it's strategic on Dakota's end. Anybody who knows narcissism knows that is one of the traits, and I'm not diagnosing, but the personality disorder has certain traits. One of the traits or the archetypal behaviors we look for is, I'm going to ruin big events. I'm going to make problems before success can happen. And any birthday, any anniversary, I have a work trip, a work promotion. I'm going to take the limelight away from you because I can't handle, like the poem or the tableau about Narcissus looking in the water, drowned in his own reflection. I can't handle it not being about me. How can I make it back about me? You mix that with somebody who grew up in a family system where they're desperate to just be seen and make it all about them, mixed with substance use, mixed with early childhood trauma and religious trauma. Here comes Taylor Frankie Paul, unfortunately. I love her candidness, and not appropriate to conduct either of them in the way they are when they have kids. You and I are both parents. I would be horrified. And I'm honestly surprised that the court system didn't act sooner. Maybe I'm not privy to that because I don't know her case number. But I'm surprised that after all of this came out, just now are they going back for a custody modification? That also feels strategic to me, knowing what I know about family law and the court system. That further speaks an archetype of him, in my view. Hey there, listeners. Are you tired of settling for less than you deserve in your relationships? Do you ever feel like you're not being seen, heard, or valued the way that you want? Or maybe you've been wondering why you keep attracting the same kinds of people into your life, or why certain patterns seem to repeat themselves in your relationships. The answer might be deeper than you think, and you can find it in my new course. Rewire Your Relationships is a transformative course designed to help you stop settling for less than you deserve and start embodying your most confident, assertive, and authentic self in your relationships. You'll explore how your early experiences and parental influences have shaped your views on love, dating, and self-worth. This isn't just about tips and tricks for dating. It's about understanding the core beliefs that drive your relationships that you attract. You'll learn how to break free from those old patterns and start creating the kind of connections that truly reflect who you are. Imagine stepping into a relationship with clarity and confidence, knowing you're attracting people who value and respect you for who you really are, your deeply authentic self. The Rewire Your Relationship course gives you the tools to rewrite your relationship story, one where you're no longer settling, but thriving. Visit taliabombola.com/rewireyourrelationships or check the link in the show notes for more.
The video itself, with the timing and everything, again, not privy to all this information, but it feels very much like he was cooking this. Like, was this like a trump? Was it a trump card that like you're gonna play at the last minute
instead of keeping your kids safe? First of all, and I'm not asking that in a shamed way. I would love to know the answers because that would be very telling. And why keep recording?
Yeah, I mean, at some point, it's not about the safety of your children. It was actually, again, it's narrative and storytelling.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, I'm going to be able to, because again, the way that the video even fires up, not a justification for the actions, but we never get that part. Like we also just saw it with Alan Richardson.
Yeah.
In the video that just came out with him of like, oh my gosh, you mean Jack Reacher, this yoke guy is just beating the shit out of his neighbors? And then you actually get the next video where the guy literally caused him to crash and attacked him twice before he did anything.
Yes, we're not getting we often do not get the full story. We get the most sensationalized part of it because that's what draws views.
And what was hysterical was that neighbor had already been doing the morning rounds on all the cable TV shows talking about, oh, poor me, I'm getting the crap kicked out of me. And I was just trying to have just a calm conversation with the man. And then it was like literally an hour later, boom, we have a whole different footage of what's going on.
Yeah, it's what is that meme is I posted it a long time ago. It's like narcissists will be like, yeah, I know I did all these things to make you hate me, but now that you hate me, I'm the true victim. Like
exactly.
It's that psyche and that view and the attention seeking that is so risky. I mean, honestly, and I'm sure there's people who conduct themselves in these ways off air, off camera. This is not to say this only happens with reality TV or only because of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. There is a systemic draw. I would love to do a genogram on those girls. I would love to interview their families. And I said this to you about Bachelor and Bachelorette. My season or our would look so different because I'd be like, I don't need to meet with any of you. I'm actually just going to meet with your parents. I'm going to do a thorough psych eval, a thorough genogram. Then I'm going to look at all of their scores and assessments. Then we're going to talk because I'm going to know what you're lying about. And it's going to be a very quick screening, but it would make for not as sensationalized, though new and different, reality TV. We like the fantasy. We want to.
I'm going to ruin reality TV for everyone else, but it's just something that I stopped getting invited to like a bachelorette group like watching thing, because what I would actually do is I have found that if you want to plan or find out where they're going in the series or the episode, just start doing the ACEs scores of people that are on the TV. Yes. And what ACEs are is adverse childhood experiences.
Yes.
Now, as that number increases, there's a lot of information that we get out of it. And I mean, my personal score is an 8. So I'm not saying that you can't come back from it, but I am saying that it does give us a whole hell of a lot of information when you look at ACEs scores, because what it really helps me is I found that, like, man, as they're having those first like discovery dating sessions and you start to get more information and it seems like they're divulging more about life and experiences and whatnot, it's interesting that you'll end up having whoever the bachelor or the bachelorette is, if their ACEs scores are high, they will immediately gravitate to the other people whose ACEs scores are high.
Yes.
They will absolutely start ditching the safe bets. Yep. And that comes from familiarity, and familiarity also has a hint of romanticism to it. Because if I'm familiar with it, all of a sudden I'm starting to feel enthralled in it. And especially if you watch some of the previous seasons where you can recognize that these contestants, the Bachelor, Bachelorette, and the contestants vying for the rose, if they've come out of love bombing relationships, the love bombers snap together like immediately, right? Because it's just such a cathartic, overwhelming, warm blanket. But then what happens? We're sitting there having the follow-up episode and sorry, we didn't make it. Why? Because as soon as we came out of the snow globe,
right,
that's all we're used to. We can hold it together for 8 weeks. We can hold it together for a couple months, but then we're going to back away. And so like, that's where I was fascinated with Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, was just like looking at the ACEs scores of like, and again, I can't have a valid one. I'm just guessing, but based off of what they've shared, you start to realize, wow, each couple pairing has very high ACEs scores.
Yes. And to that end, if what I grew up in is not healthy but familiar, I will seek out what is familiar more than I would put myself in a position to be uncomfortable to get what is healthy or healthier. And with these types of relationships, it is a trauma bond, a twin flame, a soul, whatever you want to call it. Kind of the real recognizes real. Oh, if I view that I'm only worthy of this, or I've been told by my own family I'm messed up in all these ways, it must be true. I haven't been told otherwise, or I'm trying. Like Taylor went to treatment. I'm trying to believe in myself otherwise. But this bespeaks just how crucial the way we speak to and about our kids, and whatever we talk about, how we speak about them to others, and in and out of earshot, and to them directly, and really to ourselves. They pick up on that too, but more so what we instill in them is the way they view themselves in the world. So if they think they're worthless, or they've had so much trauma, never get anybody good, this is all you can settle for, make it work. Why are we shocked when they're trying to make it work in such especially toxic ways for the sake of unity, family, faith, staying together, whatever their reasoning is? And part of it might be sensational TV drama and not wanting to be blackmailed. That's what Jessi was talking about too, that he realized it's not healthy for me to be chasing my husband around the house to try to get his phone so he doesn't ruin my, like, that's not how spouses should behave. And we don't often know that. Obviously, we hope they're not capable of that. But if I'm drawn because of my ACEs score, because of my trauma history, because of what I believe about myself, to think this is the only, or this type of relationship is the only thing I am ever going to have, I may as well stay and make it work. And if it's on TV, I might be getting paid. There's other incentives to stay with what is toxic and unhealthy. Even if you're not on reality TV, but especially if you are, there's a brand, there's an image, there's other deals. Like there's the business side of things too, that keeps people motivated to stay in these toxic cycles far more than just, I am used to toxicity. Now I'm getting paid by this toxicity. Really hard to tell somebody, like I think we've talked about before, and then I want to pass the mic back, working with victims of human trafficking or sex when they come out of it. One of the things that I used to notice when they would report or be in sessions or groups was, well, I used to get paid X amount for doing this, and you want me to go get a job somewhere else. And the leader was like, you didn't get paid, you're pimped it. You made nothing. And they would have to sit there and be like, oh, your body made another person thousands of dollars is the reality of it. Don't conflate that with your, and this is not to sound dismissive, they would conflate that with their own earning potential to a very negative, and then they wouldn't even give themselves a chance. You could make so much that and more, not being used, not being trafficked, not using your body. These people can have change. To draw the parallel, these people can have healthier relationships, but it's going to start with, what kind of relationship do I have with myself, and what do I think I'm worthy of and capable of? And I'm not going to stand for being mistreated or being hurt or being abused for the sake of, this is all I'm good for views, for sense. There has to be that intrinsic choice. Like when Jessi left, she's like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore, living in this blackmail, toxic this. And Taylor's episode with Dakota, when they're crying, and you can see they're both, I think and Macy, I think, walked out to kind of referee. They're both, whether it's genuine or not, speaking the words of, this is so sad. This is such a toxic cycle, and I wish it could be different. And if we didn't have a kid together, who knows if they'd even still be connected. They're clearly living out their own inner child wounds too, because the both of them, that's why she said she slept with him again. She saw her kid walking, him walking, and it reminded her of her kid. It's so hard to break the toxic trauma bond when have a kid with someone, because they're half of each of you. It brings up all this childhood shit that maybe you managed to put away. You can't not confront it anymore. That's the systemic piece of this.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a great point of like, because especially working with individuals who have either been sex workers or they have been sexual abuse survivors, you do get trapped in this idea of like, well, my body has always made money in this way. You also wonder if that doesn't also happen with reality TV. I mean, we could actually like go through like the Tory spelling side of things of like, man, and talk about for darn near 20 years of your life, the most toxic spillover that was done for cable ratings. Was it really done because it was necessary, or was there a perpetual, let's go back to it because it's the only thing that we know we can consistently make money of? That's that was what was always heartbreaking, was the series didn't have a ton of hope when it was Tori and Dean. It wasn't about like the hope of them reconnecting. They of course tried to spin it that way, but like you could feel these two people were going to work.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
oh, we accept this level of intrusion into our lives because it's the only thing keeping us afloat.
Right.
And so like you can also ask like, man, I wish I could just have a conversation with Taylor and say, having survived everything that you've survived to this point, was the Bachelorette actually the starting point of this next chapter in your life that you would have wanted to have? Take away the video, take away the cameras, the producers.
This had come true.
If you're actually finally at a point in your life where there is not so many overt pressures on you on who to make the decision as your happily ever after, why then would we elect to put ourselves under a microscope again?
I venture a guess. Part of an answer of why people want that might be if I don't feel wanted by my own family and I feel shamed. And I doubt if people I've been with in the past want me because now I'm single and I'm on this show. What better gift or affirmation, I'm putting those in quotes for our listeners, not yours, than going on a show where I am the sole object of affection and I believe everybody is there. Maybe they have obviously their own motives for exposure. It
True.
didn't used to be that way also before social media, but that's a whole other episode. I believe, if I'm Taylor, I believe, and I am the object of all this affection, maybe that will be enough validation. And if somebody picks me off of that show, also the process to be picked is very love bomby, very escalated, very on brand with somebody who enjoys toxic relationships, consciously or subconsciously. Most people fall for love bombing because they're like, yeah, I should be treated that way, like I am amazing. Or, oh my gosh, this makes me feel so good. Either way you slice it, I want to be on that show where 20 plus guys are seeking me because the amount of validation I feel knowing all of them want me and I get to pick puts me in power in a way that I may not have felt before. With the one-on-one with Dakota, it's if he likes me or not, or if I am pleasing to him or not, then I feel empowered. But if he's ignoring me, if he's with other girls, if he's this, I feel like worthless. There's so much power being placed in what other people view. And if they like me, then I like myself. The codependency piece you mentioned, people are probably trying to heal. In this case, she might be trying, and this is not a neg at her if she ever hears this, she might be trying to heal what feels such a void in her. If you are in front of 20 dudes, what better way to avoid the pain of isolation or I'm not wanted than to counterbalance it with any of these guys I pick want me. They might also want fame, but I might be going in the projection of they all want me, and then maybe I will finally find somebody who won't leave me or abandon me or hurt me, but I didn't go under conscious pretense. We will all be hurt by our partners. You and I have talked about this.
Yeah. I mean, so I would hope, like the way that you just laid that out, that she's also doing it from the lens of personally for me. I just wonder if, like, where the split is I would love to really ask her, was this decision personal or was it professional? Because it feels like you said, it could be a shot in the arm for a franchise. It could also be, it helps me have a level of relevancy again. But did you do it for you? Or was your team telling you this would be a great decision for us?
Right.
And that's just where I sit. It's like, man, that will tell us a lot about where we are today. And just putting ourselves in certain positions that, like, I have to ask myself those questions myself quite often. Is it good for me professionally or is it good for me personally?
And
like
hopefully.
And I'm telling you, I put a lot of money, I leave a lot of money on the table because I refuse to discredit the personal side. Like if it's going to take away from my ability to be with my kids and my wife, and there's like, there's certain things I can't. It's getting harder and harder to schedule evening clients with me. Why? Because I'm really enjoying bath time.
Same. Yeah.
And so but it would be very easy for me to get lost in the rat race situation of, well, damn, the money looks good, if I'm never asking myself, well, what about personally? Just because you can do it, do you want to do it?
Is it
Does it actually align with what you want?
And does it align with, if you were your most healed self, would it be good for that version of you? And that's, I think, one of the hardest parts with being in the limelight media, reality TV, having a certain persona that you need to embody, like Whitney being the villain in the beginning. And then whoever her and Connor's therapist was, I imagine they saw one. I think that person should be interviewed. Maybe they should be on this show helping others. And I'm not saying make them go back, like not keep Macy and Jason together, or I'm not saying to do that, but
it's not an ultimatum.
We're not blending ultimatum, right? Like, it's not like Secret Lives of Mormon Wives meets Ultimatum. It's more about what kind of guidance and counseling did they receive, because from what it looks like, they've actually come out on the other side, whether or not it's a lavender marriage, whether or not the example they're setting for their kids, from what I've seen snippets of, I'm not all the way through the season, seems much more respectful, seems much more communicative. They seem to really have each other's backs, support. And even when Zach is sitting there talking to him about, like, oh, he's like, this revelation, it's almost as if one of the people has to sacrifice everything that they want for the other to, have this partnership. And he's sitting there rocking the baby. And he's like, my Instagram bio is Whitney's husband. Like, I'm proud of this. I love the role that I have as a dad. Yes, I want to have fulfillment, but Zach is really struggling. And you can see that in his conversation with Jen, because she says, she's like, now it's my turn. And you can see this like ego, pride, and that's not a negative. Like, you can see this, like, he's ecstatic, and he's just like, oh, like he wasn't planning on, even though she was a breadwinner, he wasn't planning on her being in the limelight and him having to be the stay at home. And that's usually where a lot of patriarchal religious inequity is getting highlighted. Okay, you don't mind that it's like this when you get to be in this position and I'm here, but if the shoe were on the other foot, now it's a problem.
Yep.
Interesting.
Hello.
So that is one of my final comments, not just on the Frankie, Paul, and the Jessi and Jordan, on what this has highlighted for that kind of culture. Be very wary of what reality TV portrays. Of course, you and I still don't know.
Oh, absolutely.
Making comments on what we have seen and inferring from our clinical judgment as well. There is merit in knowing yourself before your partner. And if you do learn about yourself along the way and realize it is not a healthy or good fit, and I have kids involved, making a decision for the best interest of your children and for the future of yourself being the healthiest version for them. Sometimes the sacrifice is a partnership. Ideally, have it be, if you're not on TV, ideally have it be as least dramatic as possible. And if you are in reality TV, you kind of get paid for views. So I don't really have advice for you on that. But if you're a viewer, it's not everything it looks like. And that it's like the Ronnie and Sam of our generation, basically, is what I've seen as well. Because I grew up on Jersey Shore. I mean, that like...
Oh, of course.
But I love that storyline because you got to see years from then how Mike... like, you get to see it through. Just because we idolize toxicity does not mean that should be a relationship. That's what I will end on. What is your closing thought?
What I'm getting out of this conversation, and what I've also sort of gotten out of the last few days of just watching this thing like pour out over itself, is, do we also have a responsibility as consumers to continue watching? And what I mean by that is, like, sure, we all could play stupid up to this point, but I said to you before we even started this episode, in the first episode I ever watched, Secret Lives, Taylor always felt like a nuclear explosion inside of a glass case. Like something was just about to come out, right? You could feel that pressure, and I think it's why everyone was watching it, was because of how there was a level of like fakeness to, yes, these women had built amazing careers for themselves, but these careers were all like, they were all houses of cards. And so there's this like silent part of you that's like waiting for the collapse, right? Because you know it's going to be drama. When we're sitting here and we're recognizing that what we're participating in as consumers is leading to acts of domestic violence, we are not being helpful in the situation, where essentially this is the modern day gladiators, where we ask people to put themselves in amphitheaters and sacrifice their lives for us.
Yep, it
and
is.
So how do we navigate that? I think in reality, and I don't know if it's going to happen, but I would love for the bachelor, bachelorette to come out and say, hey, we have new standards on what we're going to be looking at. Like what is our responsibility and how are we going to be held accountable to put out programming that, yes, is fun to watch, but is also not extorting the most vulnerable?
Yes. How can we portray what actual relationship goals should be and healthy love, even if it doesn't sell as well? It is educating a generation. And what kind of education do we want to put out, and what kind of education do we want to consume? So I think more will be revealed, and for us in our future episodes, highlighting that as well. So thank you all for tuning in. And if you have any comments or questions or feedback for us, you can either DM us. I'm on Instagram at Talia Bombola. Adam.
I'm at Wild Ethos Counseling.
And you can also email us at ask@betweentwoclinicians.com. And we'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Between Two Clinicians. We would so appreciate if this episode resonated with you, for you to share it with somebody, and also find your favorite podcast platform and like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast. We would love to attract more listeners just like you and have this message be spread to whoever needs it. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.